It's been 53 years since Project Bluebook was shut down as an investigative body, and it has been just as long since Congress had a public hearing on UFOs. This week, on May 17th, 2022, a hearing was held to inform Congress and the public, and it was both intriguing and disappointing. Let's explore. Hi everyone, and welcome to Project Bluebook, the place for the exploration of all things unidentified. I am Thor, and thanks for tuning in. There are definitely new learnings from the hearing at the House Intelligence, Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation subcommittee on May 17, 2022. In attendance were committee members, Congressman and Chairman Schiff, Chairman Carson, Congressman Mr. Crawford, Dr. Wenstrup, Mr. Himes, Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Krishnamurti, Mr. Layhood, Mr. Welch, and Mr. Burchett, with presenters on behalf of the UAP Task Force from the Department of Defense, the Honorable Ronald Moultrie, Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and Scott Bray, Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence. The Office of Naval Intelligence has been involved with UFO research since the 50s. The hearing lasted a little over 90 minutes and was followed by a classified briefing. It is always a challenge to thread the needle of balance between openness and transparency on one hand and top secret classification on the other. The Pentagon officials did their best to explain their balancing act. There's a link to the entire 90-minute public portion of the hearing below this podcast. What we have learned. Since 2017, a new task force has been put together, the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, acronym AIMSOG, with a core mission to identify aeronautical and national security threats posed by UAPs. In an effort to destigmatize the process, the group has created a protocol for reporting without ridicule or personal risk. When an aviator or any other staff member of the U.S. Armed Forces, no matter the branch, encounters a UAP, they have a path to report using forms now provided by AIMSOG. 400 cases have been reported since 2017, and 144 thereof remain unidentified, which is a high number, over 25%, remembering Project Bluebook's 5% number and Nick Pope's confirmation that the number of the UK's Ministry of Defence was also at 5%. Of the 144 unidentified aerial phenomena, 18 showed behaviors that defy known physics, as well as known technology regarding aerodynamics and propulsion. Mr. Bray's statement that more reports are coming in since the UAP task force started gathering data is correct. The hearing, to me, was a live event deja vu of the report from the Office of the Director of Naval Intelligence. It demonstrates the excruciatingly small baby steps of progress that have been made in almost a year since, including the way they view the data. Let me explain. For the benefit of the committee, they reiterated the 5 buckets of unidentified aerial phenomena, namely 1. Airborne clutter, birds, smog, debris, meteors. 2. Natural atmospheric phenomena, clouds, gases, airstreams, etc. 3. U.S. government and industry development program technologies, and on the flip side of that, 4. Adversary technology systems. And then there's the infamous 5th bucket labeled Other, in which everything else can be dropped, including genuine UAPs and UFOs, cleverly labeled by the AIMSOG group as scientific discovery. What AIMSOG has accomplished under the budget allocation allotted to the UAP task force is to establish a process for gathering data and store it in a comprehensive way in one place. In support of this, training for the use of reporting protocols has been accomplished, as well as the activation of the same reporting protocols at all branches of the U.S. military. The other important area the task force claims to have made progress on is the removal of the element of stigma, and there is no element of ridicule, risk to career, or reputation harm to the servicemen involved with the reporting process. This is a huge accomplishment, if true, involving the changing of a culture around sightings within the military. Their message to the rank and file is that if you see something, report it. Mr. Bray added that Navy pilots now have on their kneeboard, in addition to their other checklists of aviation, a brand new UAP reporting protocol document as they fly around the world. While the gentlemen from the Pentagon swore to transparency, that they would continue to release information as classification warranted, and they correctly pointed out more information has been revealed over the last 5 years than in decades prior, they also conceded there is no protocol or plan for this in any kind of formal way. They also did not offer anything constructive on how analysis was going on, like the 2004 Nimitz incident, other than to simply state that it remained unidentified. They promised to follow the evidence and data wherever it will take them. Mr. Moultrie iterated that he was mindful of transparency obligations, but added it was a balancing act between national security and openness, citing elements like technology, sources, and methods used to retrieve data, as well as implications of the data on our national security defense infrastructure and platforms, as well as potential effects on our offensive capabilities. I can think of an example of a classified information following the release of the Nimitz 2004 footage, that during a Navy training exercise, a UAP observed, chased, and recorded by David Fravor on board his Super Hornet fighter jet. Another piece of information did come out through Jeremy Corbell, that the UAP rendezvoused with the fighter jets at a so-called cap point, a meeting place in the sky, a point in a three-dimensional grid. The Tic Tac knew where they would meet before they met there, which means they knew their exercise plans and layouts. It proves not only intelligent beings behind the UAPs, but that they had insights into the plans of the military exercise. This exposure of a weakness in our defense system is a legitimate cause for concern and qualifies as reason for classification. One of the statements that concerned me was the explain away that seems to have happened regarding a night vision triangle object we've all seen, which Mr. Bray explained as unmanned vehicle in a drone category, simply appeared as triangles because they were double processed light sources via the night goggles as well as the NRSL camera in use. Other lights were observed in the area at the same time, and when pressed on whether there had been a simulated test to recreate the conditions that produced the triangle, Bray was less than crystal clear with his affirmative answer. The most interesting segment of the public hearing was the Q&A with the committee members. Wisconsin Congressman Mike Gallagher dug deeper.
Mr. Moultrie, as the chairman mentioned, DoD had an initiative to study UFOs in the 1960s called Project Bluebook. It's also been well reported in our briefing and in other places that we have more recent projects, specifically ATIP. Could you describe any other initiatives that the DoD or DoD contractors have managed after Project Bluebook ended and prior to ATIP beginning? Did anything also predate Project Bluebook?
So I can't speak to what may have predated Project Bluebook. I mean, of course, there's Roswell and all these other things that people have talked about over the years. I'm familiar with Bluebook. I'm familiar with ATIP. I haven't seen other documented studies that have been done by DoD in that regard.
So you're not aware of anything in between Project Bluebook and ATIP?
Not aware of anything that's official that was done in between those two. Okay. Hasn't been brought to my attention.
Okay. Additionally, are you aware of any other DoD or DoD contract programs focused on UAPs from a technological engineering perspective? And by that I mean, are you aware of any technology initiatives focused on this topic other than initiatives focused on the individual case investigations?
I'm not aware of any contractual programs that are focused on anything related to this other than what we are doing in the Navy Task Force and what we're about to launch in terms of our effort.
Same question for you, Mr. Bray.
Same answer, not aware of anything outside what we are doing in the UAP Task Force.
So just to confirm, you're not aware of any technology or engineering resources that have been focused on these efforts besides what we've mentioned today?
Once again, I'll say no contractual or programmatic efforts that are involved. The reason why I qualify let me qualify it that way. I can't speak to what people may be looking at in the department. Somebody says, I'm looking at something that may be unidentified. I can't speak to that. I speak to official programs that we have on the record.
It's also been reported that there have been UAP observed and interacting with and flying over sensitive military facilities, particularly not just ranges, but some facilities housing our strategic nuclear forces. One such incident allegedly occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base, in which 10 of our nuclear ICBMs were rendered inoperable. At the same time, a glowing red orb was observed overhead. I'm not commenting on the accuracy of this. I'm simply asking you whether you're aware of it and whether you have any comment on the accuracy of it.
Let me pass that to Mr. Bray. Looking at the last 3 years.
That data is not within the holdings of the UAP task force.
Okay, but are you aware of the report, or that the data exists somewhere?
I have heard stories. I have not seen the official data on that.
So you've just seen informal stories, no official assessment that you've done or exists within DoD that you're aware of regarding the Malmstrom incident?
All I can speak to is, what's within my cognizance of the UAP task force, and we have not looked at that incident.
Well, I would say it's a pretty high-profile incident. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but that's out there in the ether. You're the guys investigating it. I mean, who else is doing it?
If something was officially brought to our attention, we would look at it. There are many things that are out there in the ether that aren't officially brought to our attention.
So how would it have to be officially brought to your attention? I'm bringing it to your attention.
Sure, so,
this is pretty official.
Sure. So,
Mr. Carson further asked if we had assurances that they were open to all hypotheses. They said yes and remained open to the possibility that this process could lead to a scientific discovery. The unknown unknown that lives in the other bucket, number 5 category. Mr. Krishnamurti asked pointed questions of curiosity. How many collisions have occurred? Answer, 0. Have there been attempts to communicate with the UAP, like, hey, you are in restricted airspace, identify yourself? Answer, none. Any armed engagement? Answer, no. Wreckage in your possession? Answer, no. Anything observed underwater? Answer, wait for the classified briefing. I would have continued with these questions. Are you aware of unidentified artifacts existing at the Pentagon or any military base resulting from a UAP encounter? Have you inquired to all branches of the military if they hold UAP data, photographs, narratives, testimony, artifacts, or other evidence to gather them into one place for study? Have you corresponded with the Foreign Technology Desk? Do you have UAP data originating at the Army Materiel Headquarters at Wright-Patterson, Ohio? And if not, have you asked for data from this base? Do you have UAP data originating from Groom Lake S4 or Area 51? And if not, have you asked for data from these military installations? Do you have UAP data from Walter Reed Medical Center's autopsy department? And if not, have you asked for it? Do you have UAP data from White Sands Research Center? And if not, have you asked for it? Are there off-planet UAP incidents you're aware of? Are you sharing data with NASA? And is NASA sharing data with you? Aren't there historic data files on UAPs, or at least USOs, held by your office, Mr. Bray, at the Office of Naval Intelligence? And do you incorporate those files into the UAP Task Force documentation? Have you read the Edward Condon book, Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects, commissioned by the Air Force? Because it might help point you to more information. And lastly, walk us through your analytical methodology, please. Moultrie confirmed being aware of Roswell as a story, but they had no information outside of the 2017 through 2022 UAP Task Force files. What about the Project Bluebook files? Shouldn't they at least be integrated and re-evaluated? How much file cabinet space and computer memory is needed, and does the budget allow for it? How many people are on this on a daily basis? The whole thing exposes compartmentalization and disconnect that breeds paralysis and inability to correlate the entire body of information, including civil research by PhDs, professors, award-winning journalists, and others that committee members casually dismissed as amateurs, with Mr. Layhood even calling for the criminalization of anyone making claims regarding the phenomena. If you think about it, That is perhaps the most shocking authoritarian statement of the entire hearing. We do have a First Amendment. While the two servicemen presented their scope honorably and consistent with their mandate, it is clear they're siloed. And even as they themselves describe this task about correlating data, they clearly have but a very limited scope of data to correlate the 400 cases observed within the military since 2017. They seem to have very limited, if any, access to historic data, files, photos, testimonies, and artifacts that would help correlate the data to build patterns of similarities or differences and expedite the task force understanding for the benefit of national security and to avoid surprise scientific discoveries, including from bucket number 5, the other. Data aggregation is everything when it comes to meaningful analysis, and the UAP-UFO phenomena is a gargantuan research project with grave implications for humanity's future. The established Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, based on this hearing, seems to not have the scope of data, nor the mandate or resources to appropriately study the topic of unexplained aerial phenomena. You can watch and listen to this and other podcasts on Project Bluebook, the place for the exploration of all things unidentified. Each day, let's practice compassion and kindness. And please subscribe. I am Thor, and thanks for listening. See you next time.